All right. Welcome, everyone. Glad you're here. I'm sure we'll be joined by others. Folks tend to trickle in in the first 10 or minutes or so. We have a wonderful part one of two-part discussion with Rabbi Ezra Weinberg and on divorce in Jewish liturgy and traditions, and he'll have a lot more to say about that. But I just want to thank you very much for being here, and really interested to hear what you have to say. And people have questions. Might be surprising what we learned tonight. So I will turn things over to you, Reb Ezra. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Eliyahu. Do you want to say anything more about how we met?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely. So we have a mutual friend, Rabbi Karen Aviv in Denver, who works with Judaism Your Way, and she reached out to me. I was going through a divorce myself, separation and divorce, and she suggested that I join a group that Reb Ezra does. This is a Jewish men's group, and so yeah, a group of guys. We get on Zoom like this once a week. I think it was about 6 weeks, and yeah, it was really a beautiful experience to have people to talk to, and we all have different experiences and things in common as well. And it was interesting to hear more about what the Jewish tradition, how it handles divorce, and there's room for it, and space for it, and support for it, and so the process and procedures. And yeah, it was good to be able to learn about that, and also just to hear about people's experiences and have wise guidance from Reb Ezra, and how our experiences also were connected with our tradition, and it was a beautiful experience.
great. Thank you. I'm really honored to be here. It sounds like this is a wider geographical gathering than I realized it would be. Not everybody's from Trin, um,
Trinidad.
Trinidad.
It
Uh,
does mean the Trinity, so you saw that. Yeah,
nice.
yeah, folks pop in from all over.
Great. That's beautiful. Okay, but Temple Aaron is the host.
Temple Aaron here in Trinidad. Yep, synagogue built in 1889, and this is one of the things that we organize are these learning experiences, and yes, people come in from all over. Rabbi Joe knows a lot of folks, and so yeah, people have been a part of this for about a year and a half, 2 years now.
Great, great. Okay, so thank you. First of all, pat yourselves on the back for being brave enough to join a conversation, a learning about a topic that a lot of people don't even realize they don't want to talk about. So you're, whether you've gone through it or not, or you have someone in your family that there's a lot, it's a, I've learned that there's a quite a rabbit hole of this conversation, both in experience and in Jewish tradition. So just quickly, um, this week's session, I want to just give you a sense of what to expect this week and what to expect next week. Um, this week, we're going to kind of focus on what does Judaism have to say about divorce. Spoiler alert, a lot. And then next week, so yeah, so kind of looking at the past and looking at our tradition, not all of it, but just give you a couple snapshots. And the next week's class is going to be it's kind of more of a present tense and a future forward conversation. It's like what would it look like? Um, what would it look like? How might we interact with those in our community who are going through this moment in their lives? Like, what would be a way, knowing what we would know about what Judaism has to say, like how might we want to interact with that population in our lives moving forward? Um, so those are the two kind of frames uh, for the top for tonight and next week. Um, just a little bit more about me. I run a series of Jewish initiatives around divorce, including Jews Get Divorce, where our mission is support, destigmatize, educate um, around Judaism and divorce. And so I just want to uh, maybe in the chat, I see all your names. Just I'd love to know when you hear the word divorce, like what's the first thing that pops up into your head, like word association. You can either come off of mute and say it, or you can put it in the chat.
My first response is either sadness or sorrow. I guess that's two words,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
ultimately it revolves around that theme of just sadness of two people coming together in light, in love, and ultimately it's not to be.
Yeah. Just I see, okay, sadness. I see disappointment, collapse. Yeah.
Mm.
Can't argue with any of those words. Um, and yet, it's so much more. Um, it's really it's a life moment. It's a life moment, kind of like bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. It's a life moment like death, similar to death in certain ways. So there's a lot of loss, and it's a life moment like birth, because there's a rebirth or potential for rebirth, and it's a life moment in, like, for some people it's a mazel tov, for some people it's condolences, um, and it's not always clear unless you know the situation what the right thing is. But it definitely has a reputation for sorrow and devastation and loss. But there's a lot more there. It is those things and more. Um, and it's often when I have people brainstorm this, this is typically the way it goes. Our first, as a society, I think, as a culture, we typically we've drift towards the loss. That's sort of how we've learned to think about it, and it's not wrong, but it's also only a part of the puzzle. Um, so before we kind of get into the main topic, I just want to give you a sense of what brings me to this work, how I got involved in this topic. I'm 51 years old. I'm a rabbi. How did my rabbinate get focused on divorce? There aren't too many other rabbis in the country that do this. Um, so I'll regel echad on one foot. I'll tell you that I am a child of divorce. My parents separated before my second birthday. I have no memories of my parents together. Um, and it was a very high conflict divorce. Like, lawyers, and this is in the 70s. There was no mediation, was barely known about at that point. It was just like the only advice they got was get yourself a lawyer and make sure you get what's yours. And it was a messy, messy divorce that reverberated throughout my life, for a long time, for decades, to the point, to the extent that my parents could not be in the same room for my bar mitzvah, and I ended up having two bar mitzvahs um, on consecutive weeks, if you can believe that. Um, yeah, and my parents were both, community leaders. My mom was a rabbi, and my father was president of his Jewish organization. Like, they're well-resourced leaders, and they didn't have resources to nobody with any sensitivity towards family dynamics guided them. They were just kind of told, arm yourself for this war, this battle that you're going to have to fight, and it created so much. It exacerbated already what was difficult, I'm sure. Um, anyway, fast forward, in college and in grad school, my tikkun, my response, it's my way of fixing this kind of hole in my life was I majored in something called conflict resolution. Uh, I went to Hampshire College. Have you ever heard of Hampshire College? Anyone hear the news? Yeah, yeah. Literally yesterday they made an announcement to close their doors, which is like another thing. But they it was a school you could create your own major. So I decided I was going to be a peace studies and conflict transformation major to kind of learn how to help people in conflict to kind of come up with better outcomes. And I was inspired by what was happening in Israel at the time. Obviously, things have changed there a lot since the 90s. Um, but I was interested in doing for others what couldn't have been, what wasn't done for me. As an adult, I got married hastily, um, and I got divorced. And I assumed that the tools and resources that my parents needed that weren't available to them had been, in the 30 years since, had been developed. And that was not the case. I went to my rabbi, and he was deer in headlights. He had nothing to offer me other than, like, we'll get you the Jewish divorce document. He didn't have a, he couldn't meet me in this. My life was falling apart. I had two children. Um, there's so many things that happen to divorced people as their lives are being kind of changed dramatically, very quickly. Sometimes slow, but sometimes very quickly. There's a lot of need, and all he could offer me was a kind of a symbolic Jewish divorce ritual, which I did with him, and he did a good job with that. But most liberal Jews don't even do that, and that's all rabbis have training for. And I'm a rabbi myself. I didn't have any training for how to guide a family through this process, what to offer them, what kind of support options are out there, how to navigate the legal system, what are the legal options, what are the grades of mediation. I got none of that. I was shocked because I had experienced this so viscerally as a child. And so I kind of realized at some point that it's going to be my job. I was sort of trained for this. I was ready for this. I was in a professional crossroads. It's like, okay, I'm going to begin developing these resources. I'm going to begin educating the Jewish world on how to talk about divorce, how to just name it, how to walk into it, how to not be afraid of it to the same extent. And so that's what Jews Get Divorced ended up being. It's a platform for education, for destigmatization and support. And today we're going to be talking more about the education aspects, and next week is going to be more about destigmifying and what it means to support people going through that, what it might mean. Any questions? Great. And I'll tell you the number one reason that this issue matters to me is that other Jewish life cycle moments, especially death, there's a prohibition to isolate yourself. There is the laws of Shiva are that no matter how much you don't want to be around people, people have to come and make a minyan. You need 10 people to say Kaddish, right? They superimpose that you can't be isolated in the moments of your life where you need support. They won't let you be alone, and you might have an instinct to want to be alone. I don't want to bother people with my troubles, maybe, but Jewish tradition, we impose community at certain times because we know that that's the right thing, and that's what people need more than they might realize. And that's not the case with divorce. Divorce people get isolated because the community doesn't know how to show up. The community doesn't know how to step in and say, here's what you might need. There's so much fear. There's a lot of good reasons for fear. There's fear of taking sides. There's fear of, that divorce is contagious. There's a lot of good reasons, but as a community, we haven't learned how to show up. So what happens? People get isolated who are going through divorce. They get pushed away from community. And isolation is like one of the big problems of the 21st century, and it hasn't. The Jewish community is not a stranger to it. I watched this amazing movie last night on Netflix called Eleanor the Great. Anyone seen it? It's actually a Holocaust movie, or at least the movie that highlights aspects of the Holocaust. Yesterday was Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Remembrance Day, and so I wanted to do something. So I watched this movie, and I highly recommend it. It's really beautiful. There was a quote that says, "Why do we isolate exactly the moment that we need human connection the most. And I was talking about grief. In grief, we have this instinct to isolate ourselves in the moment that we need support the most. That there's it's not just in the Jewish community, but in the Jewish community we have this too, and this is a chronic issue, is a divorce. So my motivation to do this work is to connect people to community when they need it the most, when I could have used it the most, when I was going through it, when my parents could have used it the most. So yeah. Any questions, reactions?
That is kind of surprising to me, considering, like you said, that we have these structures and these processes in place to support people in all these other life cycle events, but not necessarily here. I mean, there's a lot of processes that I learned from you, or that I've learned that maybe people don't necessarily know about, to help people go through the stages of divorce. But yeah, I don't get the sense that that
Right.
the
And I think,
isolating aspect and the disruptive aspect of life is really addressed.
yeah, right. Like what you said, Roger, it feels like a failure. Right. People equate divorce as synonymous with my marriage failed. And Elia, you've heard me say this. I've reframed that I believe my marriage didn't fail. It came to its completion. But there's a huge sense of shame and failure that people have taken on. There's this the thing that I committed the most in my life, put the most resources in, and this is how it ends. Like, there's incredible amounts of shame, and we haven't figured out as a community how to talk about that, how to name it, how to. It's intimidating to approach somebody who's going through that, because you don't know how to. It's a hard thing to interact with. Yeah. So I'm gonna go back to that moment that I described where I met my rabbi and he didn't know what to say. He was so afraid of taking sides that he was kind of immobilized. He didn't have any kind of real wisdom to offer me, and I was shocked by that. I was surprised, because he had been a good rabbi to that point, and he is a good rabbi. But I decided to do a deep dive. I'm gonna I want to find out. If he's not gonna tell me, I'm gonna find out, what does Judaism have to say about divorce, right? And what's going on? Like, is this a taboo subject in Jewish tradition as well? Like, I was experiencing it as taboo, both as a child and as an adult in the Jewish community. But I knew, like, first of all, the numbers. We know that 50% of marriages don't last, or don't go all the way to the end. And so that was, we kind of know that, so what does our tradition have to say about it? Is it as confused as I was? Turns out, no. Our tradition has a lot to say about Judaism, about divorce, and I'm gonna give you kind of 3 snapshots of things that it says tonight. 3 things that, I'm gonna kind of give 3 examples of the ways Judaism talks about divorce. But first, before I do that, I want to give it a frame, and I'm gonna need your help, kind of helping me tackle this frame, because what I've noticed about it, and this is interesting, it's an interesting quality. I discovered that Judaism has a lot to say, and at the same time, it's hidden in plain sight. The examples I'm going to show you are all things that are actually very obvious and like, oh, really? And so it's like they're right there, they're in plain sight, but at the same time, they're hidden. And so the question I'm asking you now that I want to talk about at the end, and hopefully we'll have like 15 minutes for conversation, is, why is that? why is there this dynamic where there's clearly a lot of ways to talk about it in our tradition, but it's also hidden at the same time? I want to hear your takes on that, because I that's just a dynamic that I discovered. Nobody told me that. Hidden in plain sight. Often I call this class like Judaism and divorce hidden in plain sight. I don't think I use that term for this, but okay. So here are the three examples. Okay, number one, divorce is a mitzvah. Now, I don't know what you know about mitzvot, but the Torah has 613 mitzvot, commandments. Like 2/3 of them are negative commandments, and thou shalt not desecrate the Shabbat, right? And 1/3 of them are positive commandments. Thou shalt honor thy mother and father, right? Those are in the 10 Commandments, but there's 613 commandments in the Torah. That's the kind of like a famous number. It just so happens that one of those 613 commandments is it doesn't say thou shalt get divorced. That's not what it says, but it creates the condition that divorce happens. It's like it says that divorce is a reality that some people might encounter. So I'm going to give you the specific. All right, am I able to share my screen? I think so. There we go. Okay, can you see it? Oops.
Yes, I can see it. You guys all see that? Divorce is a mitzvah number one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me make it a little bigger. Okay. All right. So this comes right out of the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 24, verse 1. Yep. A man takes a woman into his household as his wife and becomes her husband. She fails to please him because he finds something obnoxious about her. This is 3,000-year-old text. We know it's going to be patriarchal and be incredibly oppressive to women. But he doesn't want, so he finds something wrong with her, whatever, and he writes her a bill of divorcement and hands it to her and sends her away. So you have the origins of the get, and the origins of the ritual. He hands it to her and she leaves, and that's in the Torah right there, like mentioning divorce. So we know that it's 3,000 years old, and that's it. There's no more conversation. That's all the Torah. This isn't a parsha that has 73 of the 613 mitzvot. It's the parsha. It's the portion of the Torah with the most commandments, the most mitzvot, and this is one of them. Then the next one goes on to something about, if someone comes and robs you, it's just like a bunch of random statements in this parsha of civil law and of home law. And so it's old, it's archaic, but it shows that there is a way out of a marriage. It obviously only shows it for the man, and so there's all kinds of problems that way, and there have been problems ever since, but it lays the template that a marriage doesn't necessarily have to be forever. Okay, but there's nowhere here that actually says that it's a divorce, that it's a mitzvah. By the way, when we think of mitzvah, like we think of like good deed, right? You heard that, but a mitzvah is literally a commandment, one of the commandments. So is it a good deed? Is it not? Well, that's an interesting question. Is divorce sometimes the divorce is a good deed, but the question is it a mitzvah? Is it really a mitzvah? Okay, I have one backup text in the form of the most famous Torah commentator ever by the name of Rashi. He is the most extensive commentator on the Torah, and he says, "Mitzvah alav legorsha." Okay, it is his duty. It is a mitzvah. It is his mitzvah to divorce her because of she should not find favor in his eyes. So it's quoting the verse that we just read. When a man has taken a wife, let him write a bill of divorcement, and then he says it is his duty. It is a mitzvah. He's commanded to divorce her. If so that's right there. Mitzvah, Rashi says it. Rashi's like the kind of gold standard of Torah commentators. And if he's saying it, you know that other people have said it too. Okay. So that is example number one. That divorce is considered a mitzvah in Jewish tradition. And if it's a mitzvah, that means on some level it's holy. It's a sacred thing. It's one of the things that God has commanded us. Whether you believe in God or not, like something that's a mitzvah is considered sacred. And that's not how we usually think about divorce, right? We think of it as a shanda, as a real, as something that warrants secrecy and gossip and something that you should be embarrassed about. But this is the opposite take. It's saying, no, this is a divinely, if you believe that the Torah was given by God, that a divinely ordained commandment, that divorce is, by the way, it's impossible to do all 613 commandments. There's one that's like you have to stone your rebellious child if he doesn't listen to his parents. Like there's no Jew in the history of Judaism has ever done all 613 commandments. There's another commandment that you're supposed to write a Torah before you die. Most Jews haven't done that. Like most of us don't even do half of them. So when you say it's a commandment, it's not like you have to do it. It's just like one of the things that if you're in this situation in life, then it's considered a holy gesture. There's extra added weight. Nod your heads if that surprises you. Yeah. Any thoughts or reactions? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Oh, yeah.
So I imagine you're gonna talk a little bit more about what other texts besides Torah, kind of the details of it, and I'm curious to know also, is there a circumstance in which if a woman wants to get a divorce, is that addressed at all?
It's not addressed in the ancient texts, but that's become, and that's most of the movements have normalized divorce being equal opportunity. There's still a problem in the most Orthodox world, and you've probably heard about women who are chained to their husband, or husbands won't grant a divorce. That's still a problem, but that's a problem that's being addressed more and more. And really, later experts on Jewish law have, Judaism is a process of generations adding to what's already been there. So, in most circumstances, women now can leave their husband and don't have to ask permission. That's, yeah. It's pretty egalitarian. So, okay, one of the things I wanted to say about divorce in the Torah, one of the other major hidden examples of is like we have some key biblical figures who one could say gotten divorced. And I'll start with Abraham, father of the Jewish people. What's the story we read on Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the new year? The first Torah portion we read in synagogue, where most people are in synagogue of the Jewish year is on the first day of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? And most people, they're hearing the story of Abraham and Hagar. And God tells Abraham, and Sarah tells Abraham that he has to banish Hagar, who's his maidservant, but she's also in the status of mother and second wife. And she's banished. And even used the word garesh ota, which is the modern root of the word divorce. And so the first story we read about in the new Jewish year, on the first day of the new year, is a story of a family transforming and collapsing and changing. And both Hagar and Ishmael are kicked out of the family. to the wilderness to die. God saves them, and they become, Ishmael becomes the father of, Islam. There's lots to say about that, but like right there, Abraham, he divorces one of his wives, and we know it's normal for men to have multiple wives back then, but we don't think of Abraham as getting divorced. We just think of him kicking out Hagar, but actually, like, she was the mother of his other child. And so it might not be a divorce the way we think about it, but it's, a family breaking apart. Some of the aspects. So I don't think I'm reading too much into it to say that it's a form of divorce. That's one example. So Abraham, not a minor character in the Torah. And number two, maybe the most major character in the Torah, Moses. We know Moses, when he leaves Egypt the first time, he marries this Midianite woman named Zipporah. Okay? And by the end of the Deuteronomy, she's not there anymore. Zipporah's gone. And in fact, Aaron and Miriam, his sister and brother, accuse him of marrying a Cushite woman. And the commentators do flips to like show that this Cushite's actually Zipporah, but they just like the Torah made a mistake. Whatever, they find ways, but like there are commentators who also say actually Moses he had to distance himself from Zipporah, and he took on someone else. So like there's a question mark. At the very least, there's a question mark about Moses' status with his initial wife and the kids. And there's actually a part in early Exodus where Moses sends Zipporah away. We don't know what happened, and she never comes back. He sends her away with her father, Yitro, and her kids. He sends them away. So there is question marks about the two most well-known characters in the Torah and their marital status. Right there, hidden in plain sight. There's a lot more I could say. We could do like an elaborate tech study on both of those situations, and I'd love to do that, but we only have a limited time, so I'm kind of going a little quicker than I normally would go, because we only have till 7 o'clock your time. All right, so that's all kind of number one. The divorce in the Torah. Number two, the second kind of snapshot that I want to show you how I found divorce in the within Judaism, the most shocking place you would ever expect it. In the ketubah, in the Jewish marriage document, the traditional Jewish marriage document. We think of it as a marriage document, but it actually is the blueprint of the divorce. I didn't know this when I was getting married. Most people don't know this. Can you imagine? Like telling people, as a rabbi, you're having premarital counseling sessions with a couple and saying, okay, let's talk about what's going to happen if you guys get divorced. Oh, it's right here in the ketubah. You're going to give her a certain amount of money and you'll resolve it and you'll treat each other, fairly. It's actually a good question to ask people before they get married. Like, how will this love extend past if this relationship doesn't, this relationship doesn't go the way you want it to go? How will you treat each other? And the Jewish ketubah, our marriage document, addresses that, at least in some symbolic way. So I'm going to show you what the text says. Here we go. Okay. All right. Divorce in the marriage document. This is in the traditional Jewish ketubah, which a lot of people don't use, but they would do well to look at this, I think. It's in Aramaic, so I'll read it in English. And if you shall be divorced from me with a valid bill of divorce according to the laws of Moses and Israel, you shall receive from my property 200 silver zuz. Zuz from like the Haggadah my father bought for 2 zuzim. Ancient currency, which are due to you according to the law of Torah, aside from your dowry and the additional sum of this ketubah. So there's like an agreement here. There's like, if this doesn't go well, we agree to the following. And that's that's quite a statement. It's a powerful statement to mention. You know, a lot of couples don't want to talk about divorce when they're in their marriage, premarital state. Like they don't want to contaminate it. They don't want to, what do you call it? Give a, give a bad omen or a, you know. But the classic ketubah is like, no, we're going there. We're going there. We're going to mention it. So like I advise people to look at even if you're not going to use the traditional ketubah, look at it, because it's not afraid of addressing what we think of as, what many of us, whether we think or not, treat as taboo. So yeah, I was shocked. I didn't, and I'm a rabbi. I didn't know that there was divorce in the ketubah, hidden in plain sight. Right? It's right there, but it's hidden. All right. And number 3, we'll get to number 3 and then we'll open it up. Number 3, the theme of separation is all over our holy texts and holidays in ways that we don't even realize. The theme of separation, like, Judaism, we think of, it's all about unity, right? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, right? God is one. We are trying to unify the world into God, one consciousness. But without separation, there's no unification. That's just a theological concept about God. But actually, I go right to the beginning of Genesis. I'll show you one more text. Oops. You see it? Separation at the beginning. And God said, let there be light. This is the 3rd sentence of the Torah. And there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And then God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day and called the darkness night. This is the first paragraph of the Torah. It's like act of creation 1a is God created light, right? Let there be light. That's what we all know. Let there be light. But act of creation 1b was God separated the light from the darkness. So in order to have existence as we know it, there was an act of creation and an act of separation. That was like very informative to me. Like that there's no such thing as unification without separation. But that's just like a mystical example. There are examples of separation and divorce all over Jewish tradition. I'll give you a couple examples. There's a whole tractate of the Talmud, 70 chapters, all about the laws of divorce. The rabbis from 1800 years ago had a lot to say about divorce. What else? So it's in the Mishnah, it's in the Midrash, and like I said, it's in the Torah. So like it goes in our core texts. There's divorces there. Rabbis have been talking about this for centuries, for millennium. But it's also in the holidays. What's a holiday that divorce might be hidden in plain sight? Either symbolically or in actuality. So the Purim story. The Purim story starts with a divorce. The first chapter of the Megillah, Achashverosh, the king of Persia, and his wife Vashti, she won't dance in front of him. She won't take his cues, and he banishes her. Their relationship ends. They're not Jewish, so we don't think of it as a divorce. It's not a Jewish divorce. We don't want to interfere with foreign laws, but it's a marriage. They're together, they're a king and a queen, and then there's a separation. And that separation leads the way for the rest of the story. Without that separation between Achashverosh and Vashti, there's no Esther, there's no Mordechai, there's no Purim story. So, but we don't think of it. We don't see that there's actually a divorce. We just think of it as, Vashti just gets banished. No, the relationship between Vashti and Achashverosh ends. So it's like a whole new way of seeing Purim. I like to think that Passover is a little bit of a divorce symbolically between Egypt and the children of Israel, right? We had a marriage with them. Joseph brings us down. We had a good thing going with Egypt for a couple hundred years, right? And then a Pharaoh arises that doesn't know Joseph, and he enslaves our people. And like the marriage goes bad. And finally, God comes in, and Moses is born, and Moses rises to his level of leadership, and we have a separation. We leave Egypt. The marriage ends right there. Like, it's not a stretch, I don't think. Um, and it's funny, actually. I was in synagogue last week, or on Pesach, and the rabbi was talking about how Passover is like a divine marriage between God and Israel. If I was giving that sermon, I would be like, and it's also a divorce between Israel and Egypt. Maybe, there's a lot of imagery of divine marriage in Judaism. That's, the sources are very clear about that, but they're not as clear about separation moments. But they're all over. They're all over. Tisha B'av, the holiday of Tisha B'av, where we like the other, besides Yom Kippur, it's the other major fast day. It's considered a holiday where there's not only is a separation but an estrangement from the children of Israel and God. It's a separation, and it takes a long time to kind of come back together. That's all over the sources. In fact, this is the last thing I'll say. What I discovered when I started studying the Tractate of Gittin in the Talmud, the Tractate of Divorce in the Talmud, there was a one chapter diversion. And it was all about the destruction of the Second Temple. The whole, most of the information we have about how the Second Temple was destroyed comes from the book in the Talmud around divorce. So the rabbis were making a connection between the story of getting kicked off our land, and being kicked out of our homes, and our families. So it's everywhere, and none of it's obvious until you start studying it. So this is my question, and we got about 12 minutes to kind of discuss, like, why is it hidden? Why is it like that? Why is divorce? Why do you think somehow there's so many potential examples of it, and yet it's not obvious? It's sort of hidden from us. What's going on there? Let's open it up. You can come off mute.
Well, Rabbi, I want to thank you. My name is Patricia. I speak as a native Mexican and a Byzantine Catholic. In Mexico, to this day, even though, as you know, divorce is everywhere, it's still not talked about much. And if it's not talked about, it must not be happening. In my own family, I have gone through 2 divorces, neither one initiated by me. I'm going to be 75 years old in a few months, and I have never talked about how devastating each divorce has been and how it's affected all of my relationships to this day. I find that people simply don't want to talk about it, don't want to hear it. It's prevalent, yet it must not be so devastating if it's happening so much. My own mother said that to me. I don't know why it should be difficult for you to go through divorce when it's everywhere. And so it must not be such a big deal.
Right.
Certainly not important enough to talk about. And so I thank you so much for bringing to bear a topic that is really tough to live through. You lived through it both as a child and yourself. I know that my son, who's now 28, we went through divorce when he was only 10, and it changed him. It changed him to this day. It changes people. So it's so profound. The effect is so profound and so lasting. In answer to your question, I don't know the answer to your question. We don't want to deal with difficult things, I think.
Yeah, there's like an avoidance built into the system. We we know we should talk about it on some level, but we really don't want to. And like it's like almost that resistance is built in. Thank you for sharing that. I'm moved by your sharing, and bringing that to our attention.
Thank you for bringing it to our
Yeah.
attention. Must be talked about because it does have devastating effects. And
Um,
good, could also be good effects, as you note. Could be a
yeah. Make sure you read the chat. Robert Donov also added things. Yeah. Yeah. My father's my dad and my stepdad are both on their third marriages, um, and it's absolutely normal in our society, and yet, um, uh, and it's popular. Like it's normal on TV and normal in the movies, and yet for some reason, um, we haven't normalized it. And religion is often the last place to go, but if like it's time. And I'll talk about this more next week. Like it's time for like us to wake up and kind of not be in denial that marriages don't last forever anymore all the time, and that's okay. I mean, a marriage that goes forever, that is a good marriage. Thank God. God bless them. They should live and be well, and we should support them. But we're not living in the reality where that's almost the expectation. There's such disappointment if that's not fulfilled, and we just don't have the answers. Um, yeah,
I mean, obviously, our tradition and even God in our tradition is recognizing divorce as a reality. So it's sort of sanctioned from the highest authority, and and yet I wonder if there's this kind of Blee Einhard, like you don't want to talk about it in case God forbid you should suggest that it could happen, or that's a part of it as well. It's like, you don't want to talk about something bad because then if it does, it's like, oh, did I bring that about, or did I bring that on myself, or
right. Except right that I understand the superstition of that, but we live in a culture where we mitigate risk. We like there's a whole field towards risk mitigation called insurance. You know, the things that are most valuable to us, we insure, whether it's our home, our car, our life, right? And yet, like there's no marriage insurance, or is there? There's no um, there's no precaution to thinking about the risk, and marriage is risky, so risky, and yet it's in some ways it's the most one of the most significant decisions people make in their lifetime, and to not consider the risk because you don't want to jinx yourself, right? It's funny how we just set a different standard for this than we do for other aspects of things that are valuable. I, yeah. Um,
JC, jump in here.
you're on mute. Uh, yeah, great.
No, thank you. Thanks for joining us on a on a Wednesday evening to discuss a topic that ultimately is, yes, there are times when it is necessary and it is a gift for a person, but ultimately in Genesis, when it speaks of it's not good for a human being to be alone. So that breakup, and there are midrashim about even how what God is doing after creation. He's making weddings and making shidduchim It's a very divinely rooted calling and gift and blessing when it works. And we do allow, unlike some religions, we do allow for humanity to not limit us to the divine ideal. When we are in it is a divine union, divinely arranged and guided, but sometimes our humanity fails to live up to those callings. So Judaism gives us a way out, a beautiful way out, but it's still not good. And I'm just thinking just about everything that you said, and what troubles me about today is that, and I'm sure it troubles all of you, and we'll hear more about next week, more about practice and the way you engage with the rituals, I'm assuming, of divorce. But what is troubling in today's times, at least in our country, is that it's almost just, yeah, I'm getting divorced, rather than realizing the sadness, even if it is necessary, that it's almost a casual, I'm getting divorced, rather than the real, even if it's necessary, it's still tragic because there was that potential for such a union to to be. So that's I hear everything you're saying, and it is ultimately for me. I'm also a product of divorce. My parents, twice they got remarried and divorced, almost a third time to each other.
Oh,
Uh,
to each other.
yeah, they
Wow,
got married,
that's amazing.
divorced, remarried, divorced, and almost remarried again.
Wow.
Uh, and I remember when my dad was passing, his his first wife and my mother, who was his second and third and almost fourth, I guess you could say, wife. We all went up to see him, the ex-wives, and it was it was very beautiful, to be honest. It was very beautiful. And he said to my mom privately, not in the presence of his first wife, who's a lovely soul. He hoped he wasn't a believer in anything beyond the material dimension of life. He was a secular Jew, but he hoped. He said, "I hope there is something. I hope there is something." So, it's always sad, even when necessary, and it's a beautiful potential that is available to us that doesn't always happen in the way, or it doesn't always turn out the way we would love it to turn out. But thank you for your reflections and the work that you're doing with trying to bring to to our awareness the real subject that is, as you say, it's hidden but in plain sight, and we don't talk about it in the way that we should because we are afraid.
Yeah, thank you. And we're afraid for good reasons,
Yeah.
which you're bringing up, and there's a lot of valid reasons, and we have to decide: are should it like how do we want to support those in our community at that moment? You
Mhm.
know, are we content with
Yeah.
kind of letting them figure it out on their own, or do we feel like as a community there's a way that we can show up that maybe we'd want them to show up for us if it happened to us, right? What's the communal obligation
Mhm.
to this life moment? Those are the questions I'm asking, and I don't have the answer, but I don't want to be I don't want to be guided by fear. and how I approach life's most significant moments.
Mhm. Yeah, I do wish, and I'll be interested to see where you develop this next week. I I feel that I can't speak for all religions, and but the few that I do know, and Judaism included in that, we we don't have the same care and service towards a person that we do say for Shiva when a person has lost somebody.
Right,
And and it really does just leave you scratching your head because not only the rabbis, the rabbis are wise guides, but so are other faith traditions. They have very, very deep wisdom. And you wonder where we need a better structure for those who have lost their relational structure.
right.
And we don't do it very well.
Yeah. There's a joke that people often say. It just kind of comes up naturally. It's almost not a joke, but people say who are going through divorce, like, I would have had more people show up at my house if my husband had died than that gotten divorced from me. I would have had more people showing up for me, you know. And it's kind of true. There's an autopilot in Jewish community. Like, we know what to do. There's so many ways you can volunteer and help somebody, whether it's in the immediate aftermath or the burial itself, or guarding the body, or going to the shiva house, or writing notes of condolence. Like, there's a script. There's there's like marching orders, but we have none of that for divorce. Um, it's so the range of difference on that is so blaring.
I'm going to leave this my last question for you. You can maybe even think about it if you don't have an answer, and I don't have an answer. I mean, I have a thought, but I don't know if my answer is correct. But here's a question. Do you think that had Judaism been, I'm speaking only for Judaism, not about other faiths. Do you think had Judaism been more or equally matriarchal, if it'd been a better balance of matriarchy and patriarchy, do you think that there would have been more ritual support for the divorcees?
Probably,
Yeah, I think so
yeah,
too.
probably. But yeah, that's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
So I think we're out of time. I think we're only going for an hour.
Yeah, I respect our allotment for everybody. But that was beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to next week, next Wednesday. I'll come back, tell friends, let people know.
Yeah, people who didn't come this week are definitely invited for next week, as far as I'm concerned.
Hmm.
Um, and you recorded it, so
Yep. Yep. Here, I'm gonna
great.
turn that off.
Okay. You share that recording with me too?